Hey, friends, and welcome to the SoulFire sessions at the intersection of passion and purpose, where you align with what sets your soul on fire. We're your hosts, Alex and Mariah, and we are so grateful you're with us today. We are all about reclaiming clarity, rebuilding confidence, and designing a future that actually fits you. So, take a breath, feel the spark, and let's step into the fire. Hey, Mariah.
Hey girl, hey. How's it
How's
going?
it? It's going. How about you?
It's good. I'm loving the fall vibes,
Yes.
that crisp air. I'm super pumped to be here today. What about you?
Yes. So excited for our guest.
I know. I have goosebumps already, and I haven't even introduced her, and I'm like having those moments where I feel like I have to sit on my hands with excitement. Today's guest is one that's near and dear to my heart. She is someone whose story reminds us that where we start doesn't always determine where we finish. And Ashley grew up in circumstances that could have easily defined her and her life and who she is, but instead she chose resilience. And so I'm really excited to hear about her life, where she is now, celebrating that, and then looking in the rearview mirror so that she can help and inspire others that are listening, and to help us overcome those challenges that get in our way in life, and to inspire us and give us actionable tips to rise. So, Ashley,
I love
thank you so
that.
much for being here today. Super
Thank
pumped.
you for having me. I am so excited to be here.
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm going to just jump right in. I mentioned earlier that, you grew up in challenging circumstances that it could have easily defined you. We're not going to go crazy into depth there. But one thing that has stood out to me since I met you is your work ethic. And I remember when I was in high school, the cheerleaders used to make these signs for all these games. I was not a cheerleader and I was not cool in high school.
Me either.
They made these signs, and there was one that said, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And here's the thing, I think you're talent, definitely. But I also think that you have probably the best work ethic out of anybody that I have ever seen. And
Wow.
grit, resilience, determination, those type of things. And I think just knowing you, that is something that defines you, a characteristic that defines you and helped you to build in your life. And so I'd just like you to briefly kind of give our listeners just a quick overview of, how you climbed in those years. And then we'll talk about when everything kind of shifted.
Yeah, absolutely. So excited to be here, especially because I feel like I'm in a season of give back. We talk about fall, but this is also a season of like giving back, and especially to you who has given so much to me. So thank you again. Yeah, so started out, I grew up really young. Like I was a mini adult at probably 10, 11, 12 years old. Had to start working really hard. We talk about accountability in the workplace, and it was really me holding myself accountable. And it was living a life that I could sustain myself at 18, be able to move out, be on my own. And so with that, I started working at 14, 15 years old at Sonic. It was the best car hop there was. The tips would
Love
just
that.
flow in. It was wonderful. And I really liked working in the weirdest way. I don't know if it was because it was space to get out of my house. I learned I have a knack for checking boxes, and maybe I was getting a high off of that, a little dopamine release. That was really my first job. And so I did that until I turned 16. And the day I turned 16, I went and applied for what I'm going to call my real job, my first real job, right? And I cashiered, and I held this job for 3 years. And when I look back and I think about that job and the responsibilities I had, between working a register, working a money center, making decisions at a customer service desk, dealing with fraud. And I look at my oldest today who's 15 and think I would never trust a 15-year-old with that. I think it just really showed kind of what sort of mental space I was in from a really, really young age. And so, I would tell you that I really started to build that work ethic from, I'm going to say 14 years old. And just carried that with me through my life. I knew that no one was paying my way through life. There was no money when I moved out to help with an apartment or a house or college. And I didn't choose the traditional route, right? I chose to build a family. And so, I moved out at 18, making, gosh, 7.25 an hour. And I have a husband, I have kids now, but I've always just been really independent. And, sometimes your family life forces you to be that way. And I've seen it go one of two ways, right? You can choose to kind of recreate what you grew up in and what you know. Or you can take a step out and say, I never want to be part of what I grew up in, and let that change you in a good way.
Yeah. And I've seen firsthand the kind of mom and wife, community member, team leader you are. And it's really commendable to think about stopping the cycle that was before you, to say, this is the generation it stops. This is the generation that those things are no more. And that's inspiring. That in itself is worthy of legacy. And when you and I crossed paths in corporate America, started out kind of as a mentorship, etc. Then we worked together on the same team, which we won't go into in a great deal of depth. It was a very challenging role, team experience, but I think it grew us both. And on the flip side of that, you had some challenges, we'll say. Again, don't have to go into great detail, but I'd like for you to share with our listeners how you felt. So you set up this story of, growing up wasn't easy, but you persevered, you were resilient, you had grit, you had great work ethic, you got a job early, it wasn't perfect, but you were making this pretty good life, right? And climbing, and probably more successful than you ever thought you would be. And then big wave of struggle comes in.
Yep.
So tell us about those feelings. Tell us about, that period or that season, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So, I've been working in corporate America, really at the same place for most of my career, collectively. And I'm only 34 today. I've spent nearly 15 years really with the same place. And so, the dream for me was, I'm going to do well. I'm going to retire here. But every step of the way, right, I said, okay, there's a ceiling for me. I didn't go and I didn't pursue an education. I have associates in liberal arts. I don't even know what that means, but I did it as a mom and as a working mom, and I'm very proud of that. But I started to get in, and I started to really enjoy jobs, and it would be, I would do really well at my first job, and someone would see that and they'd invest in me and they'd send me to classes, and then I would move up to the next job, and then it just kind of kept happening because you could see the joy in me and that I love to work. Like, I was created to be a mom and things, but I was also created to work, and I would hate never working. And so I focused a lot in my early career on needing to provide for my family, because I grew up in a place of need and relying on food banks and, charity organizations to provide Christmas for me, and the decisions of my parents of, are we going to pay the electric bill, or are we going to have, dinner tonight? That was a big reality for me. And so, in one of your earlier podcasts, I really loved the session with the counselor around trauma responses. And sometimes you don't know that they're happening. Early in my career, I hadn't done a lot of counseling. And so trauma response for me looked like insecurity in the workplace, right? I had to prove something to other people to stay employed. And, I might do really, really well in my job, but as we've learned from LinkedIn and news and the corporate environment, sometimes it doesn't matter how well you perform, right? There may be a mass layoff and you're a number, and, you're just a part of a cog. And so I needed to do more than that. I couldn't just perform. I had to be well liked. I needed leaders to like me. And so at every level I was at, if I ever got this feeling that, oh man, this director, this senior director, Mariah, we've had these conversations, like, man, the way they just talked to me in that meeting, or that look they gave me, or that question they asked me, I really don't think they like me. Can you please, in your leadership powers, can you go help me and make sure they like me? And 10 years is a long time to spend trying to get people to like you. And what I found is I was just tired. I was exhausted. And, similar to you, I wasn't the kid that was liked in high school. I ate lunch in a bathroom stall, thinking back to my senior year. And
germs.
Yeah, germs. I'd rather have germs than be sad and alone at a table.
Yes.
And so I wanted to be well liked, and I kind of felt like I I finally fit in somewhere, and that place I fit in was the workplace. It was never going to be school. It was never going to be as a kid or a teenager. It was work. I fit in. People liked the work I did. People liked me. And so I started to grow and grow in my career, and I went into a really politically charged environment that we know all too well. And was getting higher in the ranks. And I think as you get higher at any place, right, your level of exposure to politics grows in a way that they don't have a book to prepare you for. I think you're sheltered from a lot of that from your leadership. And so once you finally get to that point and you see what that's like, it's this rude awakening. It's not daily validation and, man, you're doing such a good job, and you're the favorite, you're the exceeds and all of that stuff. And so my feelings in that time were kind of a loss a little bit, right? And so I really dove into making people like me even more, and it was more exhausting. And I think you saw me showing up to work as a different person, and I was just changing, and I think I was losing weight, and I wasn't sleeping, and I just wasn't showing up the person I wanted to be. And I talk a lot to people I mentor about who are you at the dinner table when you go home, right? Like, are you cranky and grumpy because the day you had and you can't engage with your family because your mind is occupied with work? Or are you telling your family about the really cool day you had at work and this conversation you had with your coworker who you love? And that the latter was not me. I was a shell of a human that desperately needed something big to save me. And so I was rooted in fear. I lived in fear, and I really needed validation more than anything.
Yeah. I think so many of us can relate to that. Alex, you have shared your own story about struggling, and trying to find yourself. And I'm sure that some of this resonates, the feelings and the insecurities. I know it does with me. Just as the person who's experiencing it versus the person who's seeing it. Now, granted, you and I had similar experiences that manifested differently at similar times. There was a part of you that showed up to work, and then there was a part of you that would call me on the way home, or there was a part of you that had your work face on, and then as soon as you hit the door to leave, I remember one day, you were walked to your car, and in tears, like those type of things. But it was like you had your game face on. Mm-hmm. I, on the other hand, not very good at that. So I know that you felt in shambles all the time, mm-hmm. but somehow you had this magic about you that you were able to kind of mask it, if you will, in important moments and when it could wreck you. So as someone who does not relate,
yeah,
because I'm a hot mess, Alex, you're a little bit more, I think, like that. You're able to mask it, etc. I'm wondering, does this resonate with you?
Yeah. So two things that really stood out to me when you were talking, Ashley. One was your worth, or sort of your identity was formed around your workplace. That's where you 100%. Felt you felt you fit in the best there, and it became who you are. But when you got to a point, and I felt this a lot this last year, you got to a point where it wasn't serving you the way you wanted it to serve you. Whether that was, most of that's out of our control, right? Things are happening around us and that's not our control. But you have to sort of shape shift, I guess. You have to put on the mask and pretend like it's fine, and you sort of become an inauthentic version of yourself. And because you feel like you have to mold yourself to fit the scenario that's around you, because it is tied to your identity, right? Who am I without this job? But also, I don't know who I am anymore because I'm in a place that I don't understand, and I'm in a place that my soul's not on fire in this place, and my heart's not in it, and it's really hard, and there's a lot of things going on around me that I can't control. And for me, I'm a perfectionist, and so that's where I struggle. If I don't have control over a situation, or I don't even understand a situation, then I feel out of control, and I don't like that.
Oh, it's the worst. And I think shape shifting it's such a good word, And I feel like we can do that for so long. I feel like we can try and fit in and be this image and show up to meetings and use buzzwords. And I see people do it every single day. But there comes a point where that water balloon gets too heavy and it pops.
Yep.
And for me, it popped. And on the added stress of being in a toxic workplace and no longer feeling like I fit in at a place that has kind of replaced the spot of, you don't have that family that validates you outside that you grew up with. And so you finally found a place that does. And now it's like you're losing your family. And then you put on top of that, like, I'm the sole source of income in my home, right? My husband's disabled. I have kids with disabilities that I need to provide for. And
Your
to me,
one adult that cared for you growing up also died during this period. That was like
correct.
super, like a pillar of strength in your life.
My grandma, like, that's all I had to go to. And so I had lost that family and I'm losing my work family. And you're right, my identity was tied up in my job. If I wasn't good at that, then life was kind of over for me. And I kind of, have this tendency with anxiety to go to a place of, okay, if I get in a car wreck on the way home, I'm going to die automatically. And then, my kids aren't going to be fed and then they won't have a house and they're going to move out. And it's like, if I get in a wreck on the way home, maybe I'll get a bruise. Like maybe the seatbelt will get tight, but I'll probably limp home and be okay. And I've proven it to myself. And so that was happening inside my head. And I was saying, oh my gosh, Mariah, like, I'm going to either lose my job or I'm going to leave. And the thought of either of those really sucked. And I could have stayed, I could have kept going. I was put in a place where I had to make a decision. And I think back to, this class that Mariah did for our team. And it was all about journey mapping. And you had to map out your life and these big transitional moments. And I think back to somebody on the team who'd known Mariah longer than me. And he had on there at his transition point, I get goosebumps saying this. He had on there like Mariah. Mariah was his transitional moment. And I'm going to try not to cry, but I felt that in that moment. Like Mariah was my transitional moment. And I think Mariah put up with my crap and my whining for several weeks. And she said, Ashley, you've got two choices. You can stay in that toxic culture and you can keep going. I'll love you anyway. Or you can get out and like know that you're going to be okay and you are awesome and you are going to find something. And I couldn't believe her. Like for weeks, I just could not believe her. And she kept pouring into me anyway. And I made this decision in my life that I couldn't have otherwise made had I not had someone like that. And I left. I left this comfortable place with this comfortable paycheck and benefits and all of this stuff. And I was unemployed, like terrifying, right? And I don't know if you've tried to find a job on LinkedIn and Indeed, but you're left with nothing but no responses. But Mariah kept telling me, like, you are going to be okay, Ashley. You've got to stop worrying, like, quit freaking out. And she was right. And I was offered a couple jobs to stay back and maintain my pay and go to different departments. But I finally realized I had to step away and make a radical choice to change my life, for my family. And as cheesy as it sounds, it is so true. Like leaving was the best decision I ever made. And I'll never go back on that. Like it changed my life for the better. And I embraced what Mariah had been preaching to me for 6 months and trying to beat into me. It was like, fear is what holds us back from decision making, from companies making more money. Like if you want to think about it from a profitability perspective, it's what keeps us from, raising our children in a different way where they don't have to live in fear. Like it was holding me back from so much. And so I left. And guess what? I got another job. I got a job where I went and learned a whole new skill that I would have never otherwise. And I had the most fun for 6 months. And I learned in that time that I'm okay. Like I'm going to be okay. And I'm going to choose myself. And I think one of the most special parts of it for me was I showed up to interviews differently because I loved myself in a totally different way. And I said, I am not going to show up to an interview and answer these questions about ROI. And, I went and did this special thing and it, yeah, we $100 million and like this stuff. And so I stopped answering questions that way and I flipped the interviews around and I said, here's what I'm looking for. And I want you to know that if I'm ever in a situation where someone is being disrespectful to someone on the floor, we're going to go into a room and we're going to have a conversation, because I no longer tolerate toxic environments. And, I talked about, my passion is all around disability and inclusion, and it's about mentoring. And I talked about all the fun people-y stuff that lights my soul, thinking like they're not going to push me through. There's no way. And I got callback after callback after callback. And I was getting interviews all the way up to SVP levels. And holy crap, like, again, goosebumps to this day. And so, falling in love with myself and letting go of a lot of that fear has just changed my life. And I can't like overstate that enough.
One of the things that you were saying earlier, that it's almost like this voice in your head that causes this fear spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like fear and shame, fear and shame, fear and shame. And they're like dancing around in your head.
Yeah.
And the hardest part, I think, is to step off the hamster wheel of this fear and shame, fear and shame, fear and shame. And you see, like, people are telling you, like, get off the wheel, like, it's okay, but you just can't. It's almost like you're paralyzed in this fear and shame, fear and shame, fear and shame. And I've told you this, I've told Alex this, I've told thousands of people about fear, but I know because I've lived there. But I remember one time my dad gave me the advice when I was really young. I was like 20, 21, one of my first jobs. And I had a situation at work that I'd been whining about to my dad. And he said, Mariah, there comes a point that you have a decision to make. And he said, you either choose to hang up your hurts and hang up, your concerns and your frustrations, and you move forward at that place, or you leave. But you can't stay there and be pissed off for the rest of eternity, because it's not good for you. It's not good for the people around you. It's not good for anyone. And at the time I was angry and I was a child and my frontal lobe hadn't fully developed, and I probably hung up on him and was extremely irritated, but I've used his advice several times. And then later in my life, I got to be mentored by one of the people that was that pivotal moment for me, who was Greg Varan. And he told me one time a story that someone had told him about hanging up the funeral suit. And he said, you're allowed to wear the funeral suit Friday when you leave work, and wear it on Saturday. Wear it some on Sunday if you want, but then you hang it up, you put it away, and you put your confidence pants back on, and you get back in there. And it was his way of saying, like, you can be fussy for a minute, right? But, like, then it's time to change yourself. You can't always change the environment. You can't always change your leader. You can't always change the situation, but you can change your mindset. And I realized they were telling me the same thing, and now I've told all of you this, but I also know it's hard. Like, it is so hard. But once you've done it once, then the next time you catch yourself in this shame and fear spiral, you remember you survived.
Yeah.
You didn't die, right? And so, Ashley, I know, like, you are in this place now. You also have chosen healthy for yourself. You're like, I'm going to choose an environment in which I can be my best self, in which I can flourish, which I'd love for you to talk about as well. But one of the key things there in your growth, is you stepped off of this thing, stepped away from things that weren't for you, fear, shame, etc. You chose yourself, and then you start choosing differently, showing up differently. And then the universe is like, hello, Ashley. Like, look at all
We've been waiting for you.
We've been waiting for you. And now, if it happens again, when it happens again, not at work, maybe it won't happen at work. Maybe you'll be completely blessed and that will be the only time in your life it ever happens. But at some point in your life, you're going to experience the fear and shame cycle again.
Mm-hmm.
And my guess, hypotheses rather, conjuncture, if it were the word my dad would use. You both know my father, and he's probably listening.
Love him.
Hi, Dad. Yes.
Hi, Dad. Love you.
Hi, Rob.
Yes. Right. Bless. Anyway, my conjecture would be that you will have less fear and shame than the first time, and you will be able to move faster than the last time.
100%. And maybe you can relate to this from that period we went to of like Robert called it grieving. It was absolute grief. It feels like when you go and you do a ropes course, right? And you're all harnessed in and you know that you can't fall and hit the ground, but you take that first step on like the walking thing that's like 40 feet up in the air, or it feels like 100 feet. And you take the step and you're still freaking out. And before you take the step, you have this like, your stomach is up in your throat and it feels sick. And you're like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm surely going to die. And I feel like I lived in that feeling for weeks. And so I will not say that it was not hard. And I sat in it and it felt like a death in a weird way that I just can't describe unless you go through it. And I came out of it and I grounded myself in, and it's something I repeat. I tell every single one of my mentees, they're required to have this. My team is required to have this. Like, what are the 5 things you are before you're an employee of your organization? And so I repeat that to myself all the time. Like if I start getting overstressed about something at work, I'm like, okay, yep, this job's important, but first, I'm a Christian, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm an avid traveler, and I support disability and inclusion. I'm those 5 things. And somewhere down that list that I'm not even going to go on and number, yeah, I'm an employee, I serve a purpose at this job, and I'm going to show up and give it 100%. But I'm going to kill those 5 things first and do them amazingly. And so I ground myself in that so much, and I remind other people of that. And it sounds so simple, but it truly, like if you try that mantra and you ground yourself in gratitude, and like you said earlier, I could have pictured where I'm at in my life, and it could not be like further from the truth. I, growing up, never had a home that we owned, right? We rented a place. It was a really scary place. It was in like a drug neighborhood, meth all around. And so I saw that as my future. Like I didn't know it was a reality to not, be just soaking in debt. Or, I remember going to the store and to pay for groceries, they would write a check and they'd write it for $20 more, get that cash back and be able to live a little bit longer. And so I saw that life for me. But it has taken stepping off of so many ledges and just trying it. And for the most part, 99% of the time, I have wound up okay. Like nothing drastic has happened. And it's knowing your people, it's finding your people. If you don't have those people around you, like go find them. I promise you they're there. They're there in the Alexes and the Mariahs and the Ashleys. Like they are there, and you are going to become that person. And that's the most fun part. Because when I started, I said, I'm in a season of giving back. And so my most favorite thing, I texted you the other day because I restarted a belonging mentor circle, and I woke up like a kid on Christmas morning. I was so excited. I walked into a room. I had like 12 people show up to my very first one. I could not believe it. And so now I have become a Mariah to others, and it's so freeing.
That's funny. I am just inspired. I'm in awe. I have goosebumps. And I also am just thinking about your story and thinking about the word identity. It keeps playing over and over in my head. And what you mentioned earlier, or Alex mentioned earlier, in your case, this was a job that you had yourself wrapped up in, and it was, you had forgotten or neglected or ignored the other things that you were, and put all of Ashley into this job. And so when that started to fall apart, it took you with it, so to speak. And what I hear the difference is now is, you've got these other things that are even more important, and you went and found those things, and you're intentional about giving yourself to those things too, and being grateful for the different pieces and parts of your life, which I think is huge. And so that in itself could be a whole lesson in reflecting on what is it that you're giving all of yourself to. And for those of us that have gone through a divorce, for instance, are we giving our whole self to the wrong person? Are we giving our best self, to the wrong person, whether it's a friend, whether it's a significant other. It doesn't just have to be a job. You know, is your identity can be tied up in the wrong things outside of that. And so everything that you said just resonates, I think, with all of us. So true, no matter what it is, you know, just in searching to find ourselves and ourself and trying to figure out what it is that sets our soul on fire so we can live in this space of self-actualization and potential. And it doesn't always look like Ashley, doesn't always look like Mariah. It can look completely different. It should look completely different because we're individuals. Yep. And so while they can use the advice and they can use the mantras, as you said, in spirit and in practice, it's going to look different. It's going to sound different. And one thing I want to make sure that we talk about is the comparison game. You know, nobody's journey looks the same. It just doesn't. And you can use pieces out of this that Ashley's talked about, you know, surround yourself with the right people. If you don't have the right people, find the right people. Those are people that are breathing life into you, that are being positive, that are reminding you of your worth, etc. They're cheering you on. They're helping you out. They're on solid ground while you're drowning. Because if someone else is drowning while you're drowning, it just means you're both drowning. Sometimes that's okay, but only if you can get each other out of the murky hole.
We know that.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And then the other piece of that, you know, recognizing who am I? Where am I spending my time? Where am I investing my energy? And what is, like, how is that serving me? And does that light my soul on fire? So just wanted to like kind of pull that back, reflect on it, because it doesn't just have to be a job, right? It doesn't have to be, it could be, I know, Alex, you volunteer a lot of your time, and I know that you know that people oftentimes get their identity wrapped up in things outside of work.
Yeah, they do. And I think that happens to a lot of us. I think sometimes some of us are more prone to that than others. Me, anxiety. But the great thing is that regardless of what it is, and I heard Ashley say this, and we've talked about this in other episodes, is the importance of community. Regardless of what the struggle is, regardless of what the situation is, regardless of if it's work or outside of work or whatever, having people around you to help you. And Ashley touched on so many of our values too, like courage. It took a lot of courage for you to quit your job and be unemployed for a while and figure it out, right? You found freedom in that though, and you figured out who you are authentically and were able to grow from that experience. And now, like, have a completely different mindset, which I think is amazing. So good.
And it's applied everywhere. Like, I love that you bring up, this is not just if you are in corporate America or even if you have a job at all. If you're a stay-at-home mom and you feel a pressure to go be on the PTO board or go be the homeroom mom, or, you know, if you're in a HOA and you feel like you need to host the parties, or you're invited to go to a winery and you just don't want to hang out with those people, like, those are micro things too. And you got to choose what you chase, right? I chased job after job after job in this ladder, in this hierarchy that never fulfilled me. And I'm choosing now to chase my family and making a difference in people's lives and stuff like that. That like fills my bucket so much that when the teacher reaches out and she says, "Hey, Ashley," or hey, parents, we really need someone to come host the school parties. Well, I love my child, but I'm not going to give that piece of myself because it doesn't serve my child well and it doesn't serve me well. And frankly, like, I suck at it. I am not good at it. I am not event planning Ashley. But I give in other ways and I show up for my kid in other ways. And so just take that pressure off yourself to go be all of the things so that somebody else sees you as, man, that is that mom that's like super involved and super engaged. You know, you have to be okay. You have to love yourself and find the ways that you show that love differently. And you know, with Olivia, it is way different. We have what we call spilling the hot tea, right? When my kids come home from school, it's like, okay, let's hear the hot tea today. And so it'll be some silly story about something that happened at recess. And that's how I show up for Olivia. Yeah. I hope that helps somebody.
So one of the key things that you said, self-awareness is a key theme, right? And for me, I think that's like the most important attribute of a good leader, like the most important characteristic of a good leader knowing yourself. And it's interesting because it's very similar to the technique I take in business or when I'm helping businesses or organizations. It's also figuring out, what does success look like to you?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I just heard you describe is what is being a good mom? What is being a good human? What is being a good Ashley look like? And how does she define success? And how do you define success for yourself? And then using that as your measure.
Nobody has to approve it, by the way.
Yeah.
This isn't some development plan I need to go take to a manager and sign off on, right? It is my own. I own it. It lives in here. You know, I might tell my kids about it, but I don't need my husband's approval on it. I don't need my friend's approval on it. Like, it's mine. And if it works for me and my kids, awesome. Like, you don't need to worry about it.
Yes. Love that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch back on the positive emotion. Like you talked about gratitude. And I think I talked about in our first episode, my nerdy nugget of knowledge, the upward spiral, which has to do with building like a reserve of positive emotions so that when you are struggling or have a bad day at work or are in a toxic environment, you have this like toolbox of emotions, positive emotions to go back to and help you through it psychologically. Physiologically, it helps your body like through it as well, because living in those negative emotions, I think, makes the spiral go downward. Like that increases your fear and shame spiral, like Mariah was talking about. Do you practice gratitude in certain ways?
I do. So this is kind of weird, but this is my most favorite, and I did it last night, and so there's some recency here. I might go get a massage like once a year or once every 2 years. But when I was doing some therapy and like EMDR and stuff, they have you think of like a place that's a safe place to you. And so for me, it wasn't a beach or anything like that. It was always like when I'm getting a massage, I have this like, it's my favorite place, all the things. And so I go and get a massage, and I spend the first 30 minutes like in this, I don't know if I'll call it meditation. I've never been to like yoga meditation stuff, but it's like me talking to God for 30 minutes, and I'm getting this amazing massage and it feels good. But I go into this space and we go have a conversation, and I think about, the things that are important to me. So last night our conversation was all around, wanting to be more intentional with my kids, right? Like I'm finding myself, I have narcolepsy and I'm tired all the time. And so like I come home and I'm still really tired, not because I didn't enjoy my day, but I'm just tired. And so like help me with, what are some small things that I can do to show up? What is one way I can make each of the kids laugh that night? What are the small things? And so like I go into that, but then I spend so much of that time just saying like, thank you for this. Like, thank you for how far you've brought me. Thank you for the ability that I'm able to get out tonight and go get a massage. And thank you that I am employed and I can provide for my family. And like, thank you for the people you've brought in my life. And I think sometimes we think it has to be over the big giant things, but oftentimes it's like, thank you so much that I have air conditioning in my house. And I know that the upstairs HVAC unit is out, but it went out in the fall when we can open windows. Like, thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't replace it right now, but we're going to be okay and we're going to be cool. Like when you're grateful in like those small things, you don't have to wait for a big thing. You can be grateful all day long. So sorry, that was a soapbox, but
No,
it keeps me going.
Thank you for sharing that.
I think gratitude too, one of the things I tell people, started when my first oldest daughter was 14, and anyone that knows her, and when I just say 14-year-old daughter, I think most can understand what I'm talking about. We've been one.
So well.
We know one, right. And I was trying to get her to practice gratitude. She's like, I have nothing to be grateful for. Nothing.
Mm-hmm. Sounds right.
And I was like, it can be anything. It can be what you had for lunch that day. It can be that I didn't speak to you on the way to school. It can be, that your sister didn't make you mad in the last 5 minutes. It can be super little, because once you start doing those things, what happens is our brains are wired to look out for risk, and they are wired to protect us. And so they look out, our brains just naturally look for everything that's wrong or danger or bad. But then what happens is we get this just negative yuck that's energy, and it can consume us and it can drag us down. It can weigh us down. So, Alex, what a good reminder of talking about, this positive upward spiral, because that's what gratitude does, right? It lifts us from that. And if you start making those little changes where you start to notice, I put on the same two shoes today, or,
I had clean underwear.
Right,
Yes.
right. My clothes match, and you start looking for those things. Your brain starts to rewire itself to look for the good, and takes time to build a habit, consistency to build a habit. But once you start doing it, it changes everything, because mindset is everything.
Yeah.
And very quickly, there's a guy that his name is Mo, and he was raised in Africa in a mud hut. And he tells this story about his upbringing, and we should have him on the show sometime. But he talks about, riding donkeys, and he didn't have air conditioning. He lived in a mud hut. His family and their village were migrant, and they moved around and traveled and things. He didn't even have a calendar. He doesn't know exactly when his birthday was. And he now lives in the United States, came here all because of the Kenny Rogers cassette tape that inspired him. And he is the most grateful human that I know. And we could be driving through the plains of Kansas where normal people are like, there is nothing here. It is completely desolate. And Mo's like, this is amazing. The peace in the nothingness. Or in the heat of summer in Dallas, Texas, and everyone else is sweltering. And Mo is like, I'm so thankful for the vitamin D. And he is just my daily dose and reminder to find the good. And I don't know if it was his situation that caused this, or like growing up, but he just is that reminder for me, just like you, Ashley, that in the pits of hell, there's always something to be thankful for. Always, always, always. And if you can't think of it, call someone else and be like, hey,
ask them.
Yeah. Tell me what's good about me. Tell me what's good about my life. Tell me what's good about my family. Tell me what's good that you see. And they'll help.
I think America has, I really was thinking about this morning. I think America has made it where it's, they think that contentment and complacement are one and the same. And I don't think they are, right? People get so worried about well, I don't want to become complacent in my role, or I don't want to become complacent in life and become boring. And I think that's okay to want to always grow and develop yourself. But it's also okay to be content. I am so content right now that I could do what I'm doing forever, right? I don't have this chase anymore at work to go and promote and go be the next thing and do that. I have this desire to go chase my family and go chase travel and go chase the stuff that stirs my soul. And I just go back to that feeling of freedom. Man, that's free, because I don't feel like I need to, dress up every day at work in the nines and impress this person and use big words in a meeting. That's all gone away, and I can just come and I can be my authentic self in every single meeting room that I go to. I don't care if it's the president of the company is in there. Ashley comes in the room, the Ashley you talked to on this podcast, the Ashley that you burn stuff with in a bonfire. That is the same Ashley who shows up everywhere I go, unless I'm sick or something, and then maybe I'm a little different. But you get Ashley wherever I go.
It's awesome.
I love that. That's amazing. Okay, well, we're going to pivot to 2 questions that I ask every guest. And the first question is, what sets your soul on fire, Ashley?
My soul, I have found, is so set on fire in mentorship and bringing people to the place that I have come to. It is changing people from being managers to leaders. It is developing authentic people who can feel safe coming to work. Whatever background you're in or whatever your home life is, you don't have to hide that or use, again, I say this all the time, you don't have to use big words around me. I don't know big words. Let's just talk like humans. And so it is creating safe spaces for those conversations where people show up authentically. And as a result, the next generation that I acted that way to shows up as leaders doing the same thing for their people. And you continue this cycle and you see company shift from management to leadership. And that's like,
Ooh.
Man, goosebumps.
Love
Drop the
that.
mic.
Love
Love
that. That made me happy. Okay. The second question, if you could give advice to someone trying to figure out what sets their soul on fire, what would it be?
I think it's really about when you wake up in the morning and you get excited, like what are the days that happens on? For me, it was the day I had a belonging mentor circle, and it just happened innately. I didn't even go look at my calendar. I just knew it was that day. And so, what is the thing when you wake up and you just like cannot wait for it? You know, as cheesy as it is, I look forward to my team meetings, and we do what I call forced family fun. And it might be a goofy little game or something, but I know that because of that, like that sets my soul on fire because of the feeling that I get inside. And so, what is that feeling for you?
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on tonight and just hanging out with us. I loved it. I
Me
learned
too.
a lot.
Okay,
I
I
say
loved
this
it too.
every time. I'm like, this was my favorite. This was my absolute favorite. And I'm literally, as Alex is asking these questions, trying to bite my tongue because I could
I
keep
figured.
talking and keep talking and keep talking.
Yeah.
So I am personally like just really, really grateful and inspired and just really excited to see the impact that this makes and the ripple effects and you paying it forward in this way, just to know that even one person is able to get off of that hamster wheel of and the shame and fear spiral, you know, to take some of those actionable steps that you mentioned, you know, the gratitude that you talked about, surrounding yourself with the right people, choosing yourself and figuring out who you are so that you can pivot your mindset. All of those are things that people can do in their own way, in their own time, in their own space, you know, to get to where you are. And it just gives me goosebumps to know that you use this yuck and turn it into power and turn it into impact. And there's nothing more inspiring than that.
No, and it doesn't take credentials to do it, by the way. Like, I know you have big fancy degrees in quantum analytics and PhDs and stuff like that, which are super awesome. And I fangirl you for it. But you talked offline about how I never thought I could be doing the stuff that you're doing because you have this big, beautiful, powerful network. And, you know, you have all this education and you have all these friends and you've done all these cool jobs and you have this title. And I didn't need any of that. Like, and it's not to like yuck your yum. Like, those things are so cool. And I look up to you for those things. But to go change the next generation of people, like, the world doesn't need me to be those things. It needs me to be Ashley and show up as Ashley and not robot Ashley that has a cool resume. So thank you. I appreciate you. You have changed my life. Alex, I freaking love your podcasts. I listen to all of them.
Thank you. I
I'm proud of
really
you both.
appreciate that. All right, Mariah, where can our listeners find us?
At thesoulfire.com, LinkedIn,
Awesome.
Facebook, and Insta.
Yes, come check out our new-ish website. It's amazing. And we look forward to hearing you next time. Thanks, Ashley.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.